This was a political act done between Yoweri Museveni and William Ruto. And he was kidnapped by people that should not have been there acting in the role in which they purported to act. And the crime did not take place in the jurisdiction where they have taken him to. He told me that he believes that this act was not done by Museveni, but by Museveni's son. That it is Museveni's son who is currently practically running everything in Uganda. That the tweets that we are reading, the absurd tweets we are reading, are not accidental. That this kid, this brat called Mahuzi, or whatever his name is practically running the state. And that Museveni and the wife are almost like kidnapped, not literally, but in a way they are scared of their son. Dr. Kizza Bisigye is not a stranger or a small person in East Africa because he has led a political party, a major political party in the Republic of Uganda for more than 20 years. He has run for president, I believe, 3 separate times against Yoweri Museveni. He has been a consistent proponent of good governance. He has opposed repression, not just in Uganda, but in East Africa. He has stood in solidarity with freedom fighters all over East Africa. And he's made a mark and left a legacy. I say left because when he was abducted recently in Kenya, he was not himself actively participating in Ugandan politics vis-a-vis the presidential election, because the last time he left it to Bobi Wine to run, and he did not run against Museveni. So for all intents and purposes, when he was abducted in Kenya, he was a private citizen going about his business. He did not hold a public office, and he came for a private visit to Kenya to attend a book launch. He flew out of Entebbe, I understand, like everybody else. And if they had wanted to arrest Dr. Bisigye in Uganda, they would have arrested him on his departure at Entebbe airport, or they would have waited for him to return to Uganda after attending the book launch. But they didn't do this. So it is significant that they let Dr. Besigye come to attend a book launch, which was a legal, constitutional, normal, ordinary event. It was not some secret meeting of people who are planning to overthrow Yoweri Museveni in Kenya. It was a book launch. His arrival was well known. He had been invited to attend the book launch. And just before he did, he was abducted in a private residence in Nairobi and illegally taken back to Uganda. It is important, and I'll come back to this, to underline the fact that an abduction cannot be legal. An arrest may be legal if it is conducted legally, but an abduction, a kidnapping, cannot be legal. So the act of kidnapping Dr. Besigye in Kenya was an illegal act, and you cannot vanish it or justifying it by saying that he was engaged in some criminal conspiracy and therefore he should have been abducted. If somebody is committing a crime, a known crime, anywhere in the world, there are laid down procedures of arrest. The arrest has to be civil. The arrest has to be done in broad daylight. The arrest has to be done by the local authorities in uniform. The arrest has to pertain to a crime committed within the jurisdiction of that authority has legal power over. So, for instance, if Dr. Besigye had committed a crime in Kenya, he would be arrested in a normal way by the Kenyan police and taken to Kenyan courts and then prosecuted to the full extent of the law within the Republic of Kenya. If the Dr. Besigye had committed a crime in Uganda and the Ugandan authorities believed that it was a flight risk, that he was leaving and he was not going back to Uganda, they would do an extradition request to the Kenyan authorities. Dr. Besigye would then be picked up in Kenya by the Kenyan authorities, taken to the High Court in Kenya, and a request be made for the court to order or authorize the Kenyan authorities to return Dr. Besigye to Uganda. It is a judicial process. Dr. Besigye would be entitled to have a lawyer in court in Kenya who, if Dr. Besigye chose not to go back to Uganda because of any reason, including fear of persecution, would present the basis of the grounds why he should not be returned to Uganda. All right? But that is the process. It's not a question of Ugandans, whether police or not, coming into Kenya and effecting, quote unquote, an arrest. Because once you cross the border between Kenya and Uganda, and you're a Ugandan, and you get into Kenya, number one, even if you are police, you're not allowed to carry a weapon. Because this is not Uganda. Number two, you cannot execute an arrest in a jurisdiction where you are a civilian. Because the moment they cross from Uganda to Kenya, they are civilians, just like I am. The only way I could effect an arrest in Kenya or anywhere else as a civilian is if the authorities are looking for a civilian, any individual in Uganda, for instance, or Tanzania, for instance, or Southern Sudan, or Somali, or any other country who enters Kenya, even if they are serving in the security forces in their countries, and vice versa. If there is a Kenyan serving in security forces and crosses into any of these countries, or any country for that matter, the moment they enter in a different country, they enter as civilians. Their authority ends at the border, their legal authority. And this is not just under international conventions, it's also understood under international law. All right? So you cannot extend your authority unless you are an occupying power. Unless Uganda invaded Kenya and captured Kenyan territory and subjected that territory to their authority, they would not have any right to cross the border with weapons and then go to Nairobi or any other place, because they have done this before. They did this. They have done this several times in Kisumu and in Nyanza region of Kenya. They have arrested Ugandan dissidents and taken them back to Uganda. But whatever they have done it's been illegal. They have committed a crime themselves. You cannot then say, after you have committed a crime, first of all, crossing, armed, then effective an illegal arrest in a foreign jurisdiction, which means you have actually subverted the sovereignty of the state where you are purportedly effecting this arrest. Then number three, the third crime, is that then you take the person you've kidnapped and then you cross the border with that person to that territory. So these people committed, at least, in my estimation, three huge crimes. If that person that you took, like they did to Dr. Besigye, is then detained in the jurisdiction where he was not kidnapped from, in a military establishment, and is a civilian, that's the fourth crime. Whatever it is that you concoct as charges against that person would be invalidated. It's just common sense, because you cannot validate that which you did through a crime. So I cannot steal somebody's bicycle, cross with that bicycle to a foreign jurisdiction, and then just because I have crossed into another territory, that act of stealing is then legitimized. It cannot be. And because the root cause, the beginning of this transaction was criminal, there cannot be a legitimate legal prosecution against the person. So, in other words, if Dr. Besigye was being tried in any jurisdiction where the rule of law was respected, that trial becomes a nullity, because his arrest was null to begin with, because it ought not to have happened. He ought not to have been kidnapped, and he was kidnapped by people that should not have been there acting in the role in which they purported to act, and the crime did not take place in the jurisdiction where they have taken him to. These people are claiming that Dr. Besigye committed crimes in Switzerland, I believe, Kenya, and Greece. So Uganda should have been in contact with Kenyans, with the Greeks, and with the Swiss authorities, and then they could have arrested Dr. Besigye in Uganda, and then had an extradition process in Uganda at the High Court, and then Dr. Besigye could have been taken to any of these countries to be tried. But all of this did not happen. What is it that then happened? This was a political act done between Yoweri Museveni and William Ruto. And it was done for nefarious, cynical reasons, not for legal reasons, not for any reason that can be legitimized by any sensible person. It was done as a chilling example to those who could contemplate taking any kind of action against the two presidents. That is why it was done. It was not, Dr. Bisigye became now just a victim of circumstances that had been contrived between the two presidents to survive. Essentially, they fear a consolidation of movement of people resisting their power, and they want to send a message out to them that you're not safe. You're not safe in Uganda, you're not safe in Kenya, and I'm not sure, maybe you are not even safe in Tanzania, you're not safe in any East African community country, and you should not dare criticize, organize, or attempt to oppose this rulers. So that's what they have done. They don't care about anything else. I have spoken with a friend of mine who is a Ugandan, and he educated me more. And I'm going to listen to Ugandans what they think about this. I don't myself know how true it is, or what the significance is, but it is scary. He told me that he believes that this act was not done by Museveni, but by Museveni's son. That it is Museveni's son who is currently practically running everything in Uganda. That the tweets that we are reading, the absurd tweets we are reading, are not accidental. That this kid, this brat called Mahuzi, or whatever his name is practically running the state. And that Museveni and the wife are almost like, what did he call them? They're like themselves kidnapped. Not literally, but in a way they are scared of their son because their son is running the army and the security forces, and that he could take them out anytime he wants. So Uganda, as we speak, on top of it being a military state, and we know that Museveni has been running it like his own, kitchen or fiefdom, is now being run by this crazy guy called Mauzi, or whatever his name is. I leave that to Ugandans to tell me and to tell the audience.